Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to spend some time with me on the video. I always appreciate that. Guys, today we're going to be talking about old school, well, not really old school because they're still used today, but marker buoys. This is something you don't hear people talk about much anymore, but they're still an important tool in bass fishing, regardless of what type of fishing you like to do. A lot of different things you can do with them. I've been using them for 50 years, so we're going to go over that in today's video. Also, guys, a couple of quick reminders here. Just want to let everybody know that we got our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns up and running on the fishthemoment.com website. I'll include my personal lake map breakdowns in the description of the video. These are really good resources about learning more about your favorite lake or any lake you've never been on before. And also, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. Today's the last day of the 4th of July sale. You can get marker buoys or whatever. I'll put my link in there if you'd like to use that link. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, these things, if you've never used one before, I mean, a lot of people, I'm just assuming they have, but a marker buoy is basically just a big chunk of lead with a trot line string on it like this, and it goes down like that in the water. This hits the bottom, and then the marker buoy floats, where you can see, exactly where to cast at based upon the type of structure you dropped it on. Now, I'll tell you a little history about marker buoys here. Before we had GPS and mapping and different type of tech on there, it used to be really up until like the early mid 90s that we had paper maps, and there was no GPS, so you'd go, and sometimes you could go like to the U.S. Geological Survey and get real maps. Some lake maps, they had contour maps of the lake, but we'd have these lake maps, and you'd ride around the lake with the map on your lap as you were driving your boat down the lake. That's the way we did it. A lot of times, I'd take a map and I'd put it on my lap with rubber bands so it didn't blow off. But a lot of times, I'd just hold it and drive the boat. And what happened is, if you were fishing any type of structure that was offshore, didn't matter if it was a grass edge or a drop off or anything like that, the only way that you could really identify it, because we had an old school flasher, was to drop marker buoys. So say, for example, if you were fishing a river ledge at Kentucky Lake, we may put 15 or 20 marker buoys out there along this ledge so you could see exactly how the creek channel turned, or the same way with an underwater grass bed. If there was a drop off or an edge of a grass, you'd put 10 or 15 marker buoys all along the edge of this grass line, and you'd back off of it, and you could get this mental picture of what the channel looked like. People don't do that as much anymore, because of GPS mapping, but there are situations where you definitely still want to use a marker buoy, and it has to do with when you're wanting to pinpoint specific structure. And even my buddy Johnny Schultz, who's the best offshore fisherman in America, he still uses marker buoys. So here's a situation where you definitely want to still use marker buoys in your fishing. Let's say, for example, you're graphing out off the point and you find a brush pile. Now, if you see that brush pile, one of the things that I do is, you never want to drop a marker buoy right on the brush pile. I'll idle over that brush pile, see it on my 2D sonar, and I'll toss that marker buoy out maybe 20 foot to the left of it. And then I idle around, back off, let it settle up, and I know by looking at that marker buoy that there's a brush pile 20 foot to the left of it. Then I can make my cast accordingly. Now, this is the same if it's a brush pile, if it's a rock pile, if it's a drop off, if it's anything like that. That definitely makes a big difference as far as being able to pinpoint your cast, especially if the wind's blowing or if you have current in the lake. Because you'd be surprised, guys, let's say, for example, you go over a brush pile or something and you idle past it and you try to make a cast, you'd be surprised how far you drift off of it with current or wind, and you think you may be casting at it, but you're not. Now, this does not apply if you're using the cheater box. If you're using the cheater box, yeah, you'll be able to identify where your structure and your break and your drop off is, even with that. But even if you use a cheater box, it still will pinpoint your accuracy by putting the marker buoy down. So from that standpoint, I still use them quite a bit, on those type of offshore structures. Another good way to use it, all you guys that fish offshore grass, it doesn't matter if you're fishing in Florida or the TVA lakes or any type of grass bed out there where you got a big giant grass flat. One of the things that I like to do with this, if I'm working my way across the flat and I get multiple bites in an area, I'll toss out a marker buoy, and then I'll keep drifting down that flat. And then I can use this as a reference point to know where there was some activity on that grass bed, because most of the time, if you don't have much experience fishing grass beds, if you're out on a big grass flat fishing, there's a lot of dead water, but there's certain areas that the fish will group up in. And a lot of times there's nothing identifiable by that. It's not like there's a bottom change or any type of a drop off. Sometimes it has to do with there's a little bit varying density in the grass and the fish like to use it. And by chunking out a marker buoy, you know exactly where that is and you can reference that. Another little piece of advice I'll give you on this isn't as important now as it used to be, but I most of the time I used to paint my marker buoys black because they don't stand out as much, and people are always looking if you have a marker buoy out. So the brighter colors like this, if there's people around you, you can paint them black and get away with that. The main thing, guys, is don't think this is some relic from the past. There's still lots of applications for this. Like I said, Johnny Schultz, my buddy, he's arguably, in my opinion, the best offshore structure fisherman in the world, and he still uses them to this day. So that's good enough for me on that. So anyway, guys, just pick up a few. I'll put my tackle warehouse link in the description and link a couple of these in there if you guys would like to get some. We'll talk later.